Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. My guest today is Danielle Hammack, and Danielle is an executive, well-being, and empowerment coach. She works with clients who are seeking support and insight during personal and/or professional transition periods of their lives or when they need to regain their power or footing, as she likes to call it. Her clients and audiences have included both men and women, ranging in age from their early teens into their 80s, and she's worked with her on everything from addressing foundational wellness issues to navigating very specific career goals and dilemmas. She approaches her coaching from the perspective that everything is related and strives to give her clients an understanding of not only why, but how to use that knowledge to their advantage. Welcome, Danielle. That sounds so interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Gayle. It's good to be here.
Well, I guess I would like to start by asking you what compelled you to start your life coaching business?
It's funny, really. I think looking back over my life that there's a bit of synchronicity that happens if you pay attention to it. And frankly, I wasn't paying attention to it until I had a back fusion. My background was more in finance and economics. I have bachelor's degrees in both, and then I went back and got a master's in tax. And with my upbringing, I was very firmly raised that to understand and to believe that the best way to support yourself and have personal power was to get a good education and work a 9-to-5 job, and that was how you did it. And for some people, I still think that is the answer. But I myself have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So even though I didn't realize it at the time, I was very cagey about being at a desk working for someone else. And my back fusion was really kind of an aha moment. I call it the first day of the rest of my life, so to speak. And there's a story behind that that I oftentimes share with clients. And I won't really get into it here because it's a little bit longer and I know we don't have a whole lot of time. But at the end of the day, I think when you step back and if you're really honest with yourself, you can kind of see, oh, okay, this is why I'm this way. And so that's my own way of being has been like this meandering long path, but it's perfect in the way that it brought me to where I'm at. So I don't know if I necessarily chose to be a life coach. I think my clients and this life chose me.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I mean, and it's quite a departure from finance and taxes and oh my gosh, wow. So,
Yes.
uh, what advice would you give to the people who are listening to you as to their own paths? Because I think there are many people who are in a direction because either they were told to, or it was convenient, or it was a thing to do, but not because it was their life passion or dream. So, what do you tell those people?
I think that it's really important. And one of the first things that I will typically do, I would say with 9 out of 10 of my clients, regardless of why they've come to me, is really drill down and get honest with a values assessment. And when I say really drill down and get honest, I mean that because typically it takes about 5 or 6 different renditions and versions and going at it for people to get it out of their heads, what they've been taught they're supposed to have as values and what they've been taught is important to them, when underneath, if they're really honest with themselves, it's not at all. So I think the first thing and foundationally what's important is to really get to know you. And once you do that, it provides you a compass, and it makes it a lot easier for you to listen to your own gut instead of everyone else's input on where you should be and what you should be doing. And I think from a personal power standpoint, that's foundational. It's so foundational.
So, when someone does that, I mean, are they able to do that on their own, or do they need someone like you to guide them?
Um, I never say never. I'm sure that there are people out there who can sit down with a values assessment on their own, but to be honest, I haven't had a client yet. I've had some that I always, let's put it this way. I always say, go on my website, download the values assessment. If there are any words or whatnot that aren't on there, add them, give it your best shot, and then let's sit down and go through it. And invariably, I think everyone gets so caught up in what they've been programmed by society is their shoulds. Like, for instance, a big one, and I wrote about this in one of my blogs, a big one is that people, they shy away from admitting, or even to themselves, that the word power is important to them, because they think that immediately, oh, I must be a terrible person if power is important to me. Well, no, that's not the case. Just like if being a kind person or being super sweet and accommodating is not a value, that's a bad thing. There's no good or bad. It's just being who you are. I mean, so yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's really important to have someone working with you, not just a coach, but someone who has taken the time to listen to you and has kind of started to figure you out on their own, who isn't going to tell you what they think, but who's going to kind of call you on it if you're trying to come back with words or values that are not really congruent with who you are. So I think it's good to have somebody to work through them with. I mean, I know myself, that's kind of how I started using them, was when I was kind of taking a step back and figuring out what are the things that I've liked about my previous careers, and who am I? So I worked with someone else, and that it made all the difference in the world.
So, what's the key message you want your clients to hear when they're working with you?
Well, it's become a cornerstone for me. I've got a couple, but I would say the one that stands out the most is no one else can be you. So you have to do it. And regardless of why someone has sought me out to work with me, if I can get them to figure out who they truly are at their core, and then get excited about actually being that person, not only on the inside, but on the outside, that's really, to me, that's knocking it out of the park, because then that person is completely equipped. They're back in their own power, and they're able to go out and share the gifts and the knowledge with everyone else in their lives. And so to me, I mean, that's why we're all here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the most important thing for me.
Well, I think you may not think so, but I think that you had an advantage going into business because you really understood money. You understood finance, you understood taxes, you understood all of this. And many women going into business just don't know that at all. I mean, they may take $10,000 in and spend $12,000 getting it. So they really don't have that sense. So how, how did, having this background help you? And what was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome when starting your business?
Okay. Well, let me start with the first one. I think just the fact that I come from kind of a left-brained background, I've always been good with numbers. I've had a keen ability to be able to look at something from a 30,000 foot level and figure out, does this make sense? What's the ROI? Where's my break even? All of those things that I think having that kind of education and background automatically gives you. But I think coming into it has definitely equipped me to work with my men clients, especially the ones that are coming to me for business. I've got quite a few executive coaching clients that are women as well, but for some reason, when you sit down and you've got a man who is wanting to connect and is seeking advice or wants to have a sounding board to run things off of, being able to kind of step in and think, and this is probably not PC to say, but I'm just going to say it, think like a man, get right to it, not have to go off on tangents at all. I've got quite a few girlfriends that do think like that, and they're all in the business world. So having that background allows me to connect with men and gain respect and be able to be heard, whereas I don't think oftentimes men are much more judgmental, women are much more open. So having that background has definitely helped, and I don't really spin wheels and I don't waste time. If someone comes to me and has a question about something, I'm able to look at it and say, I don't know if this makes sense. Here's why. What do you think? And then I'll be able to, I can kind of guide them so that they can see it themselves. So that's where the background comes in. Some of my own hurdles have been not necessarily around figuring out what's going to work and pulling together the logistics of what I do, but I work from home and I'm married and I have a daughter and I've got 3 dogs, and just like everyone else in the world, I think when you work from home and you decide that you're going to do something that you don't have that 9 to 5, or in public accounting, we always used to joke that 8 to midnight on the clock. My lines have always been very liquid and very like touchy feely. Oh, okay, I've got to go do this, but then I've got my daughter has to get to a volleyball game, and so if you're not actually in an office working and you're working for yourself and you don't have a boss, you have to get really good at managing. And quite frankly, going back to that values assessment I talked about, I had to, my entire career, I've had to really get real about what's important to me. Am I in the?
That's true. I mean, I can see that. And so what are the main differences that you see between your male and your female clients? I know that you said that the women are more emotional and the men are more direct. What other things are there differences?
I think women are actually changing a little bit. It's interesting. Men are changing too. I think the biggest difference really is men will traditionally come to solve a problem. They usually have a specific problem that brings them to me. Women will come more for support in making a decision or navigating relationships, whether they're at work or at home. So I think just at our core, sometimes the biggest differences between men and women are men tend to be focused on problem solving. Women are still very focused on relationships and fixing them. And even when I have clients come to me for health-related issues and problems, the men typically have more of a goal, like a number, and the women will tend to be more, they have a picture in mind, or they have something they want to accomplish as a result of getting back the health, if that makes sense.
It's interesting because what you're talking about, I think, is, of course, male and female energy. And yeah. I've always had a lot of male energy, and I'm creating more feminine energy as I age, but it's still more male at this point. And it's interesting because the younger guys are developing more feminine energy because of their moms, because they've got working mothers. And so they appreciate, and their significant others are working. So I think that it is changing. I definitely agree with you. So what are some of the tools that you use to educate yourself and grow personally?
I'm a voracious reader. I always have been. And to kind of I have very eclectic taste in what I like to read. I go back and forth between quick and easy. Like honestly, one of my favorite books of all time is Who Moved My Cheese? It's a great book because it covers everything. It's like, it tells you that it's all about perspective. It just drills right down. It's short. It's a quick read. It's a great.
Spencer Johnson, he really hasn't written many books past that.
Yeah. And then from there, I tend to be attracted to people and authors who kind of have dual perspectives. And it's interesting. It's funny that you say, my husband's always telling me I have too much testosterone. So it's funny that you said that you're kind of similar. You have a lot of male energy. But I tend to read authors who like to problem solve, but then also have almost an esoteric or a spiritual perspective on the tried and true facts and solid learning that they've got. So another of my favorite books is The Biology of Belief. That's by Bruce Lipton. That's a great book. He was very much a scientist, and then he goes on this. It's basically kind of the journey that he took to get from very solid understanding of science and what it was supposed to be to understanding that there's so much more going on that we don't even think about. And then, John Maxwell, I think he was one of the best business writers out there. And what was nice about the way that he wrote and got his ideas across was just, I loved how he kept everything bullet. This is it, like 21 laws of 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is one of my favorites by him. So
right, yes.
So I'm all over the place as far as, and I mean, I started my undergrad. I told you I graduated with finance and economics, and then I went back and got my MBT. But I started undergrad as a psychobiology major. So that first semester, I had a neuroscience class, and my professor was amazing. And we read a book called The Mind's Eye in there. And so that was really the beginning of me starting to understand that it's so much about perspective, so much of management of who we are. So, yeah.
It really is. It really is about perspective. You're absolutely right. But now that your daughter is going to college and you started your own business, so what advice would you give to women who are in their own midst of transitions? Because I think, well, maybe it isn't harder for a woman to transition than a man, but I think it is. And I think it's because of the emotions you're talking about and the big picture kind of thing. I mean, men look at the big picture, and women look at the picture, and then they're dissecting it down into all these little problem areas. So I'm just wondering what advice you'd give them in the transition arena.
Yeah, I was lucky because as I saw this train coming and this this whole thing approaching with my own daughter, I've had clients who I've coached through, so I've been able, it's always reciprocal. I've been able to learn a lot from clients too, and I love it that it works like that. So it's funny in this instance, I'm not so sure it's necessarily a man-woman thing, or it's I think it's pretty natural for one parent to be more involved with the child rearing day to day, whether it's logistically one's out of the house, one's in the house, but the things that I've seen are the parent that is outside of the house as they approach this time, especially kids going off to college specifically. It's like the one that's out of the house or has a little bit less involved in the trenches relationship with the kids. They grapple with a bit of regret, looking back maybe and saying, oh my gosh, this time passed so fast. I haven't had the time that I wanted to, and they can't get it back. The parents that were more home and involved, it seems that their issue is more around, okay, I've got some holes to fill here. All of a sudden my kids are going to be gone and I've got to fill this time. And so it's a completely different one. One is like a regret type of perspective in some ways. And the other is oh, okay, I've been putting all of my eggs in this basket. Where do I put my eggs now? So very different. And again, I've seen it where it's the husband that stays home with the kids. And so he's dealing with more oh my gosh, what do I do day to day? Where do I put this, not only time energy, but emotional energy? And then, and the wife has been the one that's out. So in this instance, I'm not so sure it's necessarily a male-female thing.
Yeah, it is interesting because I know I didn't know this, but I worked all the time. I mean, I had a business when I got married. I worked, through pregnancy. I went back to work in 2 weeks, all of this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that my son, I think he resented me because I wasn't there, because all the moms on our block at that time didn't work. We were in a well-to-do neighborhood. The husbands did extremely well. Mm-hmm. And so they were just all home, and they were all wonderful, loving moms. But he said to me, when he grew up, when he went to college, when he left high school, he was the only one who could do anything. He was so independent. And it's amazing now because he is so close to me, especially now that my husband passed away, and wants me to live right near him and taking very good care of me. And it's like night and day. So it's interesting how life plays itself out when you don't even know certain things are happening, you know?
Yeah. And well, and it's, I mean, it sounds like even though you were the parent that was more out of the house, and in some respects, you missed out on some of the time. And I talk with clients a lot about this. It's not just about the time you spent, it's about the example that you show them. So when I look back, one of the reasons why I think this transition for my daughter and for me, because it's exciting for, so excited for her, but at the same time, I'm going, I can now make some priorities that weren't priorities before, because my values were about, making certain choices so that I could do and be there for her in some ways. But now I'm freed up, and now I can focus a little bit more on some of the secondary things that were also values for me. But I look at the fact that I was able to show her that you can have it all. You might not be able to have it all at the same time, but you can have it all. And so for me, it's a big comfort to know that my daughter realizes that she can do or be anything she wants to be. It's all about choices. So
It is. It is all about choices. And I think that's where someone like you is so valuable, because people don't always make the best choices for themselves and they get hung up on the wrong kinds of things. So the fact that they have a guide in someone like you is so very important, because you help them sort out in reality what is good for them and what isn't good for them, because we can all tell ourselves some wonderful stories and they don't necessarily do us any good. So this is quite nice. So
yeah.
I would like to have you tell our listeners where they can find you. Uh, where, Danielle, should they go to get the information about you?
Well, I have a website, and it's DanielleHammack.com, and Hammock is with an A, Hammack.
And Danielle is with two L's, Danielle.
Uh-huh. So www.danielle, Danielle, Hammack, Hammack.com. And I've got a couple of other websites that I also have pointed there. Be Wide Awake, and which is the one that matches my Instagram. So at Be Wide, B as in boy, WIDEAWAKE is my Instagram, and everything points back to DanielleHammack.com. And I've got a blog on there called Wide Awake, where I'm able to really get into a lot of things that I don't even necessarily get into with clients, but it's kind of my own personal therapy, and then I put it out there. So I'm really enjoying my blogging. And in fact, I kind of shelved my last blog to be able to write about this transition that I'm going through right now, this empty nester thing that I'm facing. So I'm really enjoying that. And I've got all of the information if someone wants to learn more about my background, or find out how they can work with me or read my blog. It's all right there.
So if there is anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important for our listening audience to know, what would that be? Is there anything that we haven't said? We've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get everything out to our listeners that we can. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is so important?
Well, in the beginning, we talked about the fact that everything's related, and I think it's super important to understand. And it's another reason why I think I've got a lot of clients that say I'm kind of a good combination of background that brings it all together. Is I also have a pretty extensive background in health and wellness. And I've got certification with Czech Foundation, which I think, after being on every kind of eating, I've been vegan, I've been raw vegan, I've tried everything for myself to see what works. I think Paul Chek actually really has it figured out. He's very knowledgeable on most levels of the body and the mind and movement and everything else. So, but I think that understanding that it is all about choices, I think you have to look at the whole person. So even if I have someone that comes to me that's an executive client and they really only want to work on one thing, if let's say she's just coming for this decision that she needs to make about how to progress in her career, But I find out during the interview and from my initial questionnaire that I give her that she's really not taking care of herself. And maybe she's at night, she's trying to deal with stress by drinking, or she's eating the wrong types of foods and she's sabotaging herself. I know I've got a client that even though they've come to me for an executive, really career related issue, if we don't drill down and make some changes and I'm not able to help her get more healthy so that she has, I call it we all have to have a healthy reception, a healthy antenna. So if she's making decisions, but is really not eating well, and most of her diet is about sugar and stress relief and her adrenals are all shot out, there's no way she can make the right decisions for herself. So I always emphasize with clients, even if they don't come to me for health and wellness, that is so foundational. And if you don't, it's like building a house. If your foundation isn't strong, how on earth are you going to be powerful? You can't, and you're not going to make the right decisions.
So true. Well, folks, you've heard it here. Go to Danielle Hammack and find out if there's something there for you. She sounds very wise. She sounds very experienced. And I know that you'll find something very valuable when you go there. Thanks so much, Danielle, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Gayle.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.